Hello and a very good evening. Tokyo has won the right to host the 2020 Olympic Games. And that's a boost to Japan as the country continues to battle the fallout from the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Jameson Wong has our top story tonight.
The International Olympic Committee has the honor of announcing that the Games of the 32nd Olympiad in 2020 are awarded to the city of Tokyo.
The Olympic Games to return to the Japanese capital for the first time since 1964. Tokyo defeated Istanbul 60-36 in the final round of voting at the IOC meeting in Buenos Aires. Madrid was eliminated in the first round after an initial tie with Istanbul. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe joined Tokyo 2020 delegates in celebration in Argentina. "We will do our best and work hard together," he said. Many people believe Tokyo's winning bid means the IOC was convinced by his government's reassurances that radiation leaks from the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant would not pose a threat to the Games. Jubilation back in Japan, too, as officials and residents celebrated Tokyo becoming the first Asian city to host the Olympics twice. A different story for the two cities that lost out. Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who like his Japanese counterpart was in Buenos Aires for the announcement, congratulated Tokyo on the winning bid. But he couldn't hide his disappointment. The region needs peace, and Istanbul was a perfect candidate for that, he said. And it was third time unlucky for Madrid. The Spanish capital was shortlisted and defeated for the right to host the 2012 and 2016 Games as well. For those looking for a bit of good news in the country battling one of Europe's worst unemployment rates, will have to wait at least 4 more years. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
And back locally, the Immigration Department has recently denied dozens of foreign domestic helpers applications for new visas on suspicion that they deliberately got themselves fired. This comes amid allegations that some helpers repeatedly change employers before finishing their contracts as they seek better working conditions, often causing great inconvenience to their original bosses. But a foreign domestic helpers concern group has called the government move unfair. Stephanie Choi has more.
Mrs. Wong feels like she's just been fired. Her foreign domestic helper quit after working for less than a year, saying she had to care for a sick son back home. But the helper did not ask for the air ticket to return to her home country. Mrs. Wong says she isn't asking for a helper to stay for the long haul, just one who would finish her contract. She has been through 5 helpers and not one of them stayed for the whole contract. She suspects that many helpers just make up excuses in order to switch jobs. Mrs. Wong may be right. Liu Choi-lan, the proprietor of a maid agency, says the demand for foreign domestic helpers exceeds supply, and some employers even go up to helpers on the street and offer them jobs. Reasons for maids to switch employers, she says, include higher pay, a lighter workload, and a better work environment. If a foreign domestic helper wishes to switch employers after her contract ends, the law would require her to leave Hong Kong while the Immigration Department processes her new visa. Many of these applicants go to places such as Shenzhen and Macau as they wait for their visas. There are about 320,000 foreign domestic helpers in Hong Kong. Some 97% are from the Philippines and Indonesia. According to the Security Bureau, the Immigration Department has given its approval to more than 20,000 helpers over the past 3 years to change employers before finishing their contracts. But in the past 2 months, the department has denied 45 helpers applications for new visas on suspicion that they deliberately got themselves fired. A representative of a foreign domestic helpers union questions the government move.
I think this is discrimination. I think this is unfair treatment towards foreign domestic workers. If, for example, if I can find a better employment, why should the immigration penalize me just because I want to move to that better employment.
The union also said poor working conditions were to blame for the helpers' job hopping. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
The housing chief today attempted to reassure the public that the government's plan to build more units at some of the existing public housing estates is feasible. This option is among the proposals put forward by the Long-Term Housing Strategy Steering Committee to meet Hong Kong's housing needs. Evelina Leung has more.
In its consultation document released recently, the Long-Term Housing Strategy Steering Committee says more units can be built at existing public housing estates where the plot ratio has not been fully used. The move will shorten the waiting time for public housing units for non-elderly single people. Secretary for Housing and Transport Anthony Cheung reassured the public the plan would not affect the quality of the units and the environment around them.
All the
units will follow the town planning standards, he said in an interview with TVB. Cheung added the government is looking into improving the living standards in Hong Kong. But he added that will take time.
Quality, including environmental standards, infrastructure of transport facilities and other community facilities. But in terms of space, Hong Kong is indeed behind other big cities. So if we aim to improve the quality of housing in Hong Kong, then we must strive to increase gradually the living space. But at the moment, given the rather acute shortage of housing, I think quantity, number, unavoidably has to come first.
Secretary for Development Paul Chan also commented about housing today. He said on his website that there have been calls on the government to develop country parks, which account for around 70% of the land in Hong Kong, into residential housing areas. Not all people agreed this is the right move, but this is a suggestion that can be looked into, Chan said. Some environmental activists disagreed.
I think that the country park is not a solution to our housing problem. I think that Hong Kong should not sacrifice our country park. This is a very important green leisure place for Hong Kong people.
Tam urged the government to look into its population policy and reduce the population growth in order to solve the housing shortage problem. Evelina Lang, TVB News.
Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying is in Guizhou Province to attend a regional forum. But as Vicky Kong reports, a move to restrict media coverage has sparked controversy.
Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying has arrived in Guiyang for the 9th Pan-Pearl River Delta Regional Cooperation and Development Forum and Trade Fair. Today, he met leaders of Guizhou, Guangdong and Guangxi. But the forum, which will be held tomorrow, had sparked controversy. Unlike similar conferences in the past, arrangements were earlier made to allow only 5 Hong Kong media organizations to cover the event. Following complaints by the media, representatives from all outlets will now be allowed inside the venue, but only for a few minutes. The chief executive played down the row and stressed the importance of the media in society. Leung said the media play a key role in relaying information from the government to the public. The chief executive also met with the provincial governor of Sichuan today. Wei Hong thanked Hong Kong for supporting the province and its people following the earthquakes in 2008 and earlier this year. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
Turning overseas now, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry has been making another bid to convince America's allies and skeptics that action is necessary over the use of chemical weapons in Syria. It comes as U.S. lawmakers begin work on their version of a plan which could endorse President Barack Obama's call for a focused strike. With the divisive G20 summit in Russia still fresh on people's minds, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was once again trying to make the case for action on Syria over the use of chemical weapons last month.
These are chemical weapons which for almost 100 years the world has banned from usage. And in time of war, the only people who have used them are Adolf Hitler and Saddam Hussein, until Bashar al-Assad.
Kerry was in France to shore up support for possible military action against Syria, with Paris the only partner so far who's willing to support Washington all the way. While Kerry tries to convince a skeptical world of the necessity of action, his boss, US President Barack Obama, has the task of convincing Congress that America must send a message that chemical weapons can't be tolerated. But many on Capitol Hill, including members of the President's Democratic Party, are worried the US might be dragged into another messy Middle Eastern war and are working on a draft which would limit America's involvement. Something Obama says he's wanted all along.
What we're not talking about is an open-ended intervention. This would not be another Iraq or Afghanistan. There would be no American boots on the ground. Any action we take would be limited, both in time and scope.
Outside the White House, protesters rallied to make it clear to Obama that the American people do not want to be embroiled in the Syrian war. Still, the Obama administration seems to be doing all it can to expose members of Congress to the brutality of the conflict. Excerpts of video taken right after the alleged poison gas attack were shown to Congress during a classified briefing last week. While the debate rages over what action to take, ordinary folk around the world have been praying for peace. Tens of thousands attended a peace vigil at the Vatican to pray for an end to the Syrian civil war.
Australia's Prime Minister-elect got down to business today, one day after winning the country's federal election. The incoming government, led by Tony Abbott, has promised to scrap a controversial carbon tax and stop asylum seekers from reaching the nation's shores.
This is essentially a working day. I'll be in the office now for the rest of the day, getting briefings from senior public servants, and people expect that the day after an election, an incoming government will be getting down to business, and that's what I'll be doing today. I'll be working on building a better future for a great country, building a stronger Australia, a better Australia in the months and years ahead.
The Conservative Liberal National Coalition, led by Abbott, captured 86 seats in the 150-member parliament in yesterday's election. That's about 30 more than outgoing Prime Minister Kevin Rudd's Labour Party.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Well, Moscovites have been voting in the city's first mayoral election in nearly a decade. The current mayor is being challenged by Alexei Navalny, leader of the national protest movement. Navalny is currently on bail after being found guilty of embezzlement this year, a trial he says was politically biased against him. The vote is expected to show whether political opposition to the government of President Vladimir Putin is capable of mounting an electoral challenge.
British police have arrested 2 men after a break-in at Buckingham Palace earlier this week. Queen Elizabeth II was not there at the time, but as NBC News reports, the breach has raised fresh security concerns.
It is one of the most iconic buildings in London and perhaps the world. Millions of people visit Buckingham Palace each year on official tours and at the famous royal garden parties. But late Monday night, it was an uninvited guest who scaled the perimeter fence, evading layers of security. He reached the state rooms, which house many priceless works of art. It's thought the unidentified man was arrested on suspicion of burglary in this public part of the palace. The royal family's private royal apartments are in the next wing. Another man was arrested outside. The Queen is still on vacation in Scotland and was not in the palace on Monday night. Today she was enjoying the Highland Games, far from this latest security scare. This is the most serious break-in in more than 30 years. The last time someone got inside the palace was 1982, when the Queen awoke to find a man inside her bedroom. It is said Michael Fagan sat on the Queen's bed talking to her before she was able to raise the alarm. And in 2004, a protester dressed as Batman was able to reach a palace balcony. London's Metropolitan Police say a review is being carried out after this latest breach, but one former royal bodyguard says it's unlikely the Queen will allow more security.
They have to police within the context and the wishes of Her Majesty herself, who doesn't want to be imprisoned in her own house.
But Britain's Sunday Express newspaper reports royal protection officers are anxious, saying 2 days later police pointed guns at Prince Andrew in the palace gardens, mistaking him for an intruder. No word from the royal family today. For the Queen, as ever, it's business as usual. Duncan Golestani, NBC News, London.
And still to come in the news. 28 hurt in Tolo highway traffic accident. A call for food waste reduction during the Mid-Autumn Festival. And America's Cup races in San Francisco Bay.
Now back tonight with more local news. More than 20 people were injured today in a traffic accident involving two buses and a private car on Tolo Highway in Tai Po. Rani Samtani has more details.
Paramedics and firefighters rushed to the scene of the crash to help the injured. 28 people were taken to the Prince of Wales Hospital in Sha Tin and Alice Ho Mew Ling Netherseoul Hospital in Tai Po for treatment. One of them is said to be seriously hurt, while the others have sustained minor injuries. Two Kowloon motor bus double-deckers and a private car were traveling on Tolo Highway in the direction towards Phan Lang as the crash happened around midday. The windshield and front door of one of the buses were completely destroyed. Another bus was squashed in between two vehicles. According to the police, the 7-seat private car suddenly slowed down, but the two buses behind failed to brake in time, causing the accident. Firefighters had to rescue a number of passengers that were trapped on the upper deck of one of the buses. This senior firefighter said they encountered difficulty in the rescue work, and one woman was trapped for about 8 minutes before they could get her to safety. As a result of the accident, police had to close off 3 lanes, creating a huge buildup of traffic on Tolo Highway. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
Secretary for Food and Health Ko Wing-man says he's following developments at the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant closely and could expand a current ban on seafood and vegetables from the region. It comes after South Korea banned seafood imports from 8 prefectures, including Fukushima. Joao da Silva reports.
As the crisis over radioactive water leaking from the stricken Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant into the Pacific Ocean worsens, countries across the region are keeping a close eye on the situation. Public concern in South Korea prompted authorities there on Friday to impose a ban on seafood imports from 8 Japanese prefectures. In Hong Kong, a ban on seafood and vegetable imports from 5 prefectures around Fukushima has been in place since the disaster struck in March 2011. But Secretary for Food and Health Ko Wing-man says he's keeping a close eye on the latest developments. He added he's liaising closely with the Centre for Food Safety on whether Hong Kong should follow South Korea and expand the ban to 8 prefectures. João da Silva, TVB News.
A survey by the Green Power Group reveals that the number of mooncakes thrown away by Hong Kong households last year was at a 9-year low. But the group has urged people to keep up their efforts this year to lessen the burden on our landfills. The group notes that the food waste accounts for a third of all Hong Kong's municipal solid waste. And each day, over 3,500 tons of food is dumped into landfills. A problem, they say, worsens during the Mid-Autumn Festival due to discarded mooncakes and leftovers from family reunion dinners. But in street interviews with 390 respondents, Green Sense found that each household threw away an average of 0.75 mooncakes last year, mostly because their expiry date had passed. The survey found, however, that about 40% of respondents are not willing to recycle their domestic food waste. All right, Tony, over to you for sports.
That's right, we've got an exciting mix tonight. Tennis, sailing and a bit of baseball. The US Open has its dream final. Rafael Nadal defeated Frenchman Richard Gasquet in straight sets to advance to Monday's championship match. Meanwhile, Novak Djokovic played a marathon thriller against Stanislas Wawrinka of Switzerland. Here's Jameson Wong.
Despite playing some of the best tennis of his career, the other Swiss guy couldn't put away the world number 1. Wawrinka led 2-1 before letting Djokovic back in the match. His frustration got the better of him and his racket in the 4th set. The Serb able to force a 5th set. The match lasted more than 4 hours. The top seed won the decider 6-4, reaching his 4th straight U.S. Open final.
But as I said, I managed to find my way through, to adjust, and to win, and that's what counts. And I'm really happy that that I won in 5 sets again, coming back from 2 sets to 1 down. Mentally, it's going to help me, and physically, I'm fine.
That's why you play tennis. It's to play in front of people like today in the bigger stadium in tennis, and even if I lost today, I was still happy to hear all the cheering and to have all the crowd like this, and I think it's something quite amazing for me.
Djokovic and Nadal will meet for the 37th time and 3rd time in 4 years at Flushing Meadows. Nadal beat Frenchman Richard Gasquet in straight sets 6-4, 7-6, and 6-2 to improve to 21-0 on hard courts this year. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
To San Francisco Bay and the opening day of sailing's marquee regatta, the America's Cup. New Zealand took the first 2 races against Team USA on Saturday. Kiwi skipper Dean Barker used some aggressive tactics to seize the early advantage in the duel between the 2 high-tech catamarans. There was also some drama yesterday with a few near collisions and a man overboard. Team Oracle, owned by software billionaire Larry Ellison, won the America's Cup in Spain in 2010. The United States needs to win 11 races to retain the cup. In baseball, Boston beat New York 13-9 at Yankee Stadium. Mike Napoli blasted 2 home runs. The Red Sox became the first visiting team in more than 100 years to score at least 9 runs on 3 straight days against the Yankees. In the last 4 games, Boston has slammed 17 homers and scored 54 runs. The team currently owns the best record in the major leagues and leads the American League's East Division.
And finally for tonight, glory for Malaysian-born Taiwan-based director Tsai Ming-liang at the Venice Film Festival. His latest film, Jiayou, captured the Grand Jury Prize. It's about a disgraced man who works as a human billboard holding advertisements on the streets of Taipei. The only 2 people in his life are his 2 children and the appearance of a woman who helped to unlock his feelings. With its long takes and slow pace, Jiayou bears Tsai's signature style. Meanwhile, the Italian documentary Sacro Gra won the Golden Lion for Best Film. The film by director Gianfranco Rossi portrays life along Rome's giant ring road. And that's the news for tonight.
Thanks for watching. Good night.
Hello everyone, it was mainly fine today with plenty of sunshine. It was hot in the afternoon. Now at 5 p.m, a subtropical ridge was covering southern China. Today's temperatures range from 25.8 to 31.1 degrees, and the current temperature is 28 degrees Celsius. So Freddie, what's the weather like tomorrow? It will be fine. Temperatures range from 26 to 32 degrees. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 15 to 80 and the pollution level range from low to high. The maximum UV index forecast for tomorrow will be about 10. Now, here's the latest global weather update. Cloudy in Shanghai, Taipei and Xiamen. Sunny in Guangzhou and Macau. Cloudy in Beijing, Seoul and Tokyo. Rain in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila. Thunderstorms in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore. Sunny in New Delhi, showers in Karachi. Sunny in Cairo, showers in Nairobi. Sunny in Brisbane, windy in Melbourne. Cloudy in Toronto, sunny in New York. Sunny in Vancouver and San Francisco. Rain in Paris, Amsterdam and Zurich. And that's the weather. Have a great evening.